Hello, good afternoon and very warm welcome for all of you to our Anthropology optional foundation batch. We are starting our classes from today and these classes will run for approximately 3 months. It may go a little 5-6 classes more than 3 months. Okay, we'll have 5 classes a week and we'll try to take at least 3 hours. That depends and it may vary according to the topic or according to our ability to understand and the content that I will deliver. Now see how you can maximize on our course, that let me first brief you all about, right. So we are beginning our course with socio-cultural anthropology, right. In the first part of this today's lecture, I will take unit 1.1 to 1.3, right, and in that there is basics of anthropology, right. We will discuss what anthropology is, what is its meaning, what is its scope, and how it evolved as a discipline, what is its relevance. Then we will talk about various branches or major specializations in anthropology, and after that we will talk about the relationship of anthropology with various other branches of knowledge and whether various other disciplines, you can say, right. So this is the basics that is in 1.1 to 1.3. After that we will cover the socio-cultural part of anthropology, in which we will study marriage, family, kinship organization, economic organization, political organization, and religion. Even before moving on to these socio-cultural parts, which are the topics in themselves, we will know something about the society and culture, right, because in a broader sense socio-cultural anthropology is the study of society and culture, right, and these are various social institutions that you observe, that you feel on a day-to-day interaction with other people with which you live and you interact, right. So basically this is our course in socio-cultural anthropology. Now what we are going to do and how we will move on to this course, let me tell you in brief about that. So basically you all will get a booklet, right. I have divided entire anthropology in few books, and the first book that you will get is the part 1 of comprehensive anthropology. That is the name of our book. All of you will get that book, Comprehensive Anthropology Part 1, and in this book, Comprehensive Anthropology Part 1, we have socio-cultural anthropology. In this book of socio-cultural anthropology that all of you will receive, right, maybe it may be in the transit for some of you and some of you might have already received this. Okay, so this book will be there with you, and whenever you are attending the class, I request you to sit with this book, right. It will serve two purposes. Number one, you will stick to the syllabus. Suppose whenever I dictate something, whenever I pronounce something and you do not understand, so it will be available in the book. Second thing is that whatever I speak, whatever I dictate in the class, just note it down there itself on a plain paper and just staple that paper along with these pages of this book. So you will have one integrated resource for your revision. Otherwise, you write in a copy and then you will refer to the book. So there will be two resources and it will become difficult for you to revise. It will be difficult for you to study it further. And that many of your colleagues, your peers, your seniors have experienced. I myself have experienced early. So basically it is always better that sit with this book, take certain plain papers, write the notes on them and stick with the book, page number के साथ आप लगा दो उसको. उससे क्या होगा कि आपका थोड़ा सा एक integrated notes बन जाएगा and those integrated notes will be easy to revise, easy to understand, right? Sometime when I dictate you, so I may not be able to include each and everything in the dictation, right? So here you will find those keywords, those jargons that are essential to understand anthropology. Now, when you have these integrated notes on a daily basis, you will also know that how much you have covered and how far you have to go. So, you yourself know कि कहाँ तक हमें जाना है, कहाँ तक किस डेप्थ तक हमें एंथ्रोपोलॉजी को पढ़ना है और समझना है. All these, these topics or the parts of the syllabus covered in every book are detailed and comprehensive and very succinct. Okay, whatever you require will be available in this. You need not to go for any other resource because everything will be available in these books, right? Everything. Now, not only this, I will tell you during the discussion what kind of questions can be asked, right? When we will discuss what kind of questions can be asked and what various previous year questions has been asked from this particular topic that we will discuss, right? So expected questions and previous year questions both we will discuss. Okay. Now, along with that, I will give you a daily assignment, right? Even for today's assignment, you can go to the video description and can download those assignment we have provided you for you. And I request you that when you understand the concept that we will deliver in the class and the questions that can be asked in the class, try to write that particular question whatever you understood. It doesn't matter that you have to understand everything from the very first day. It doesn't happen for most of us. So don't fear, don't panic. It will come slowly and steadily. I believe in incremental learning. Suppose if you do not write in one day and you think that I can write in a week, maybe I will write on Sundays, maybe I will write fortnightly. You can write, right, and you can do that. That's your choice. But as per my experience, as per my understanding and my learning says, if you write today, whatever you write, at least you will know that you face some difficulties in writing. And those difficulties may run from various, things. It may be because of your lack of command on the language. It may be your lack of grasp on the concept. Or it may be lack of the integration of various aspects, right? It may be due to the lack of confidence. It may be due to the fear of being judged, right? So what I say, what I suggest, don't fear. Start writing from the very first day. कितना भी गलत क्यों ना लिखो, जितना समझ में आता है वैसा लिखो, मैथमेटिकल तरीके से लिख दो, but at least do write, make effort, right? आज आप डर गए, आज आप हार गए, then nobody will come and pull you up. So start working from today, and if you start practicing from today, I can assure you this, that you can score very, very good score in anthropology, and for that matter in any other subject in which you follow this strategy, right? Because basically what we are going to do, we will work on concept building, we will have notes, right? The notes will also be substituted by some synopsis, because these question answers, and that you will get in form of model answers also. The assignment that I will give you on a daily basis, that will not only be an assignment, rather it will be a question and a model answer, right? अगर कुछ और भी नहीं तो अगर आप इन क्वेश्चन और मॉडल आंसर को भी रट्टा मारते जाओगे, I can assure you a guaranteed good score, not success, because that is up to you and it depends upon variety of factors, right? Because you have to be good in your prelims, you have to be good in your mains, right? You have to be good in your essay as well as in interview. So that depends on how much effort you can make. For that also we can discuss separately, but here I can suggest you that this will be our flow of work, flow of our understanding and how we are going to learn. So I believe I made myself very clear in telling you that how we will move. So we have a booklet, right, that all of you will get. Sit with that, open the book, right, because everything that I discuss here will be from the headings. Now, not only that suppose somebody think कि book मिल गया तो मतलब हो गया हमारा, तो we can clear that with this book. You may not be able to understand it because I will elaborate on many topics, many examples that were not available in the book, some of them, right? Because this book will make sense with me, right? Whatever I elaborate, whatever I tell you, what kind of questions can be there, what example and how you can use that example, that you can understand with the help of book. So sit with the book, take some pen and paper, open pen and paper so that you can staple, you can stick those notes with your book. That I want to suggest. Suppose today you don't have the book, don't worry, just do write everything on a paper and staple that whenever you receive the book. Second thing, the questions that I will discuss, I will tell you the question here itself and I will tell you how you have to write. A kind of model answer discussion will be there, right? Then I will give you an assignment at the end of the class that you can download from the description of our video of today's, and these assignments you will get on a daily basis whenever there will be a class, right? With model answer, that will be with model answer, right? Some of the model answers you will get after we finish this socio-cultural anthropology, so you will get an advanced booklet on part 1 of this book, Comprehensive Anthropology part 1. So part 1 advance will be there, and in that part 1 advance, what I will give you questions and model answers for everything, right, on the basis of what is expected of it and what previous year questions has been asked. So this much material you will get during the classes. So our focus is conceptual clarity, performance evaluation through daily answer writing, daily assignments, unit-wise tests and full-length tests. So that is all from the basics of this course, that how you can maximize with me in your anthropology optional, and you all know that optional is your key for success, right? If you gain, if you get a very good score, say 320 plus, so you can think that your rank will be under 100, and who do not desire to get this much good score, right? So this is it. Now let us begin our discussion with the basics of anthropology. Now, when we are beginning with basics or any other topic, so there may be certain terms that you will encounter, right? And first thing, to get yourself acquainted, get yourself familiarized with the discipline, you must understand those terms. So because it is basics of anthropology, I will be telling you about few terms that you must understand. And suppose today you feel that some of the terms you are hearing for the first time, and you may forget some of those terms. So that doesn't make a difference. बिकॉज पहली बार अगर आप किसी का नाम भी सुनते हो तो भी भूल जाते हो. So that is not a very big deal. When you read these terms frequently and when you encounter these terms over the next 3 months, all these terms will be in your pocket that you can understand and you can elaborate upon all these terms. So do not worry at all, right? Although I will do justice with these terms, right, in today's class in a very lucid manner. Second, when we are talking about the basics of anthropology, see, this is the basic, this is the foundation, this is the base of anthropology, undoubtedly. But this foundation, right, what you will do today, you will look at the building from outside. So to reach at the roots, foundation or the basics, it will take a little bit more understanding. There are people who might have appeared in interview, who might be selected in with anthropology optional, but still they don't understand the basics of anthropology. So even if the students don't get it, much of it, so don't panic, because unless you understand the theoretical developments, unless you understand the methodology is used in the discipline, you may not get a better understanding of the basics of anthropology, right? You will have a little bit clarity, but when you finish entire syllabus of anthropology, then you will better gain this perspective about better and holistic perspective about the basics of anthropology. Now, let us begin with our discussion on anthropology, and the first term, because many of you must be hearing this term anthropology for the very first time. So what is anthropology? So this word anthropology is derived from the two Greek words, that is anthropos, meaning human, and logos, that means scientific or systematic study. Scientific or systematic study. So in simple words, you can say that anthropology is a scientific study of men, right? Or you can say it is scientific study of humankind, or you can say scientific study of men. Now, men, it seems that we are referring this term to only male, right? What about female? That question must come into your mind. And when we are talking about the scientific or systematic study of human, then this study at what level or and what of what aspect, right? So which aspects are being studied? Because we human, we are an animal, we live in a society, we have culture, we have economic system or a economy, we have political organization and political systems, we have variety of religious practices, we speak variety of languages, right? We believe in variety of myths, we practice variety of rituals. So which aspect is being studied of humankind or humans? That is a question. Then suppose you want to study an aspect of mankind or a human, then where? Is it in India? And even in India, is it in the Central Indian tribes, South Indian tribes, Northeastern tribes or Northern tribes or Western tribes? Which place? Or is it restricted to the tribal people? Or it is the study of all, whether it is the civilized ones also, as well as tribal people, village and peasant societies, where? So this where is again a question asked, that because this simple definition, this simplest definition do not address to this particular what and where. If it does not address, then we must understand this definition of anthropology in a little bit deeper way, right? In a holistic way. And before we try to understand this anthropology in a holistic way, let us move on to what various anthropologists, what various researchers, philosophers has to say that what is anthropology. Because if you understand their context, what they say, then it can make a much better sense than what you can think on your own, or if for that matter I give you the very first definition which is given in your book, right, which is anthropology is systematic, holistic, integrated, comparative, historical and universal study of all aspects of mankind of all times and at all parts of the world. So this definition, I believe that it will be a little heavy for you as of now. So let us first move on to what various anthropologists, what various researchers have to say about this anthropology. Okay. So in this course of our understanding about anthropology, let us take the definition given by Aristotle first of all. Aristotle is also known as father of anthropology, right? Although what Aristotle was studying, that was quite an unsystematic beginning of anthropology. Anthropology was not systematized as we are studying today. At that time, Aristotle, who is also father of biology, father of zoology, right, and he too is recognized as father of anthropology. Now many of you may be concerned कि सर अरिस्टोटल पढ़ रहे हैं, that means हमें तो biology पढ़नी पड़ेगी पूरी. I can assure you that this journey will enlighten you a lot. It is not on neither only biology nor it is humanities. It is a unique blend of the two. You will gain a very deep insight about yourself. You will understand better to yourself, your own behavior, your parental behavior, right? Your behavior with your colleagues, everything will be much clearer, right? So how does Aristotle define anthropology? Aristotle says that anthropology is the gossip that revolves around men. What is anthropology? It is the gossip, right? वही gossip जो आप अपने दोस्तों के साथ करते हैं. So this is the same gossip that Aristotle say. It is the gossip which revolves around men. And anthropologist is a gossiper. Anthropologist is a gossiper who talks about himself. मतलब खुद के बारे में ही बात करता है. So this is the definition given by Aristotle. After Aristotle, another definition. See, there are many definitions. So we are not talking about each of them. We will talk some of them. After that, German thinkers, German scholars, philosophers, they also studied or they tried to define anthropology, and they say that anthropology is the study of men as physical and moral being. So what German scholars has to say, German philosophers has to say, they say that anthropology is the systematic study. You just try to see this trend also, that how the understanding through these definitions also is deepened, right? It is started to cover more and more aspects of the mankind, right? So what they say, that it is the systematic study of physical and moral being. systematic study of physical. Now here physical means we have a form, right, shape, our biological aspect you can say, and moral being, that means we question our actions, we talk about or we think about our own behavior, about the rights and wrongs. So this moral being, right, it is talking about the beliefs, the customs, traditions, practices, right, ideals, okay. Also all these things translates into your social behavior, your economic practices, your political beliefs, the level of technological skills gained by a particular group of people, right. So basically now they started thinking on two lines, physical and socio-cultural, you can say in a broader sense. Another, out of these various philosophers who talks about this way, we will take one example, and that of Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant you all study in your ethics, right, deontological ethics, आप सभी ने पढ़ा होगा. So he tried to define anthropology in a little bit better way. So he says anthropology is the study that describes and explains the animal origins, social as well as cultural development and progress of humankind. So what he is talking about, that animal origins, social and cultural development and progress of humankind. These are the three areas. So broadly he is also talking about the animal origins, that means the physical aspect of man, biological aspect of the mankind, right. He is talking about the way we evolved, right. We all know that humans evolved from the primates. We humans, we evolved from other primates. Our, this larger order in which we have apes, we have monkeys and all. So we evolved from there. So he is talking about the animal origins, right. He is also talking about the various customs, the various diversity of customs, practices and the types of social institutions. What are the various social institutions that you see on a daily basis? Marriage, right? Almost everybody do marry. This is a social institution. And marriage is considered by some anthropologists, I am not saying in absolute terms, you must focus on my words, that why I am not using the absolute words, that it is, rather I am saying it is by most of the people, and many anthropologists consider family as the structural and functional unit of society, and marriage is considered as the basis of family, because when the two people marry, they procreate, right, and due to the procreation they make a family, right. So in a family you can see that people are related by two ways. One is by birth and the other is by marriage, right. One is by birth, that means two people marry, they are related and they procreated a child, okay. And in our today's complex world there is legal adoption, so that can be another way to be a part of family, okay. So that is, you can say, that is another institution. Then we have kinship. Now what is kinship? Kinship is simply relationship acquired either by birth or marriage, right? Either by descent or alliance. So, birth or the blood relationship, that we call descent, right? And alliance is marriage. So, kinship is the relationship either acquired by blood or marriage. Now think, who are your kins? Whom you can call your kin? Your wife can be your kin, your children can be your kin, their children can be your kin. So kinship is a separate topic for us in socio-cultural anthropology. Now after that, there is another institutions that you are going to study is economic systems, economic organization. That is another you can say institution, right? Every society has to produce, has to consume, because without it, how they will sustain, right? How they will subsist. For subsistence, everybody needs food. For production of food, they require technology. Whatever kind of people you can see, even hunters employ some sort of technology. Even a digging stick is a technology, right? Kind of stone tools are technological developments. You cannot deny that. This camera and all these things are not the only technology, right? So technology can be using a stone spear, making that stone spear, right, so sharp that it can kill an animal, right? So that is, that comes under economic institutions. That is part of our socio-cultural institutions. Division of labor, what men will do, what women will do, what the children will do, what the young adults will do, and what the elderly people will do. So the division of work can be of multiple lines. What the rich will do, what the poor will do, what the white collared jobs will do, and what the blue collared jobs will do, right? So there are many levels on which your economic systems can be seen, right? So that we are going to understand later, but I am just giving you about that these socio-cultural institutions are being studied, and here German philosopher Immanuel Kant, he talks about that, right? So he is also talking about the progress, right? That means he is concerned about the evolution, right? Now here I am talking about evolution, but later on you will see that we will differentiate between evolution and progress also, right? So here I am talking about that evolution in this way, but later on you will better understand when we study a separate school of thought in evolution, right? So आपको हल्का फुल्का idea लगा that what this Immanuel Kant has to say about the definition of anthropology. So basically what the German philosophers are dealing here, that they are talking about animal aspect, right? And they are talking about the social aspects broadly, if you see, right? Because here when we were saying, right, that anthropos and logos, so we are saying simply that it is the study of mankind. It is the study of humans. And Aristotle's definition was not giving much clarity about it. Okay. Next, this Immanuel Kant's definition was in 1798. After him, Encyclopedia Britannica, it also defined anthropology as a discipline which is devoted to the discourse on human nature. So, Encyclopedia Britannica, it says that anthropology is a discipline devoted to a discourse on human nature. Now, this human nature, Britannica says, it says that human nature includes biological nature, social nature and cultural nature. Biological nature, cultural nature, social nature. Now, until now I was saying socio-cultural institutions, and here we are writing culture and social nature separately. Are they same or different? That is another question to ask. So that will come when we will move slowly on our society and cultural part, right? So here you just understand broadly. Biology, all of you understood. Now, culture include your, morals, ethics, law, right? Arts, myth, rituals, your knowledge including, right? So all of these part of your cultural nature, right? Your ethical reasoning, your moral reasoning, your rituals, myths, all these things are part of your culture. Now, social nature include your marriage, family, political life, all these comes under the social part. So a little bit broadening of the definition you can see here, right? Biological, cultural and social aspects of mankind. After that, another major definition. So Britannica gave this definition in 1822. After this definition, you can see the definition given by E.B. Tylor. E.B. Tylor was a British anthropologist, right, who is associated with the first systematic theory of anthropology, which is known as classical evolutionism or the evolutionary school. So he is associated with that school along with L.H. Morgan. Pen down the names whichever I speak here of the anthropologists, because that will be useful for you, because whenever you encounter the name, at least pen it down, right? So E.B. Tylor was the British anthropologist who is associated with the school of classical evolutionism, which was the earliest theory in sociocultural anthropology, right? He is also credited with the most comprehensive definition of culture, that what we call culture, right? अभी हमने बात किया culture क्या है, society क्या है, तो उन्होंने सबसे पहले सबसे comprehensive definition दी culture की भी. So what E.B. Tylor says, so he in his book Anthropology, which he wrote in 1881, he is saying something. वो कुछ कहना चाहते हैं about what is anthropology. So he says, anthropology is the study of old remains of people, right? So just pay a little bit more heed. Old remains of people. Old remains of people. That means पुरानी चीजों के बारे में स्टडी करने के लिए बात कर रहे हो. Along with that, physical features. Physical features means how you look, how tall you are, how bulky you are, right? What kind of shape of nose you have, what kind of shape of head you have, what kind of color of skin, color of eye and color of hair you have. So basically these are the physical features, right? In a sense you can say that he is talking about races, right? Races of people, because race are not homogeneous groups. आप अगर देखोगे, within a race too there are variations. Whether it is Caucasoid race, Mongoloid race or Negroid race, there are variations. You may find taller or dwarf people or even small heighted people in all these races, आपने G.C. लियोंग ज्योग्राफी की एक बुक देखी होगी. In that book you might have seen one picture of Maasai tribe, right, which is draining blood from the neck of their own cattle, Jabu cattle. They don't kill their cattle, Maasai tribe people. We will study Maasai tribe in anthropology also somewhere. It will be very interesting for you to know about them, their culture, how they live, how they make their living, everything. So what I am trying to say, that those Negrito group of people are very tall, right? Very lean and tall. At the same time, you may have heard about pygmies, right? जो बहुत छोटे होते हैं, right? Okay. So basically what I was talking about is the physical differences. So he is saying that it is the study of all the remains of people and the physical features, races, languages, customs and practices of primitive people. Okay, we are going very, very slowly. My purpose is to acquaint all of you with this terminology, right, with these jargons and what these words tries to speak. रट्टा मारने से काम नहीं चलेगा यहाँ पे, because unless you understand this deeply, you start feeling about anthropology, you may not be able to write answers, right? And that is where most of you people fail, that you cannot answer. So just pay heed to the words that I try to elaborate, right? You may not be able to distinguish between physical and biological anthropology later on if you don't pay heed here. So he defined anthropology as the study of old remains of people and the physical features, races, languages, customs and practices of primitive people. All these diverse aspects of primitive people. Now, you just try to understand here what E.B. Tyler has to say. He is talking about the physical features, means race is a physical feature, right? So physical features, language, we speak different language. In Rajasthan there is a different language, in Haryana there is different language, in Maharashtra there is different language, in Kerala there is a different language, in Assam there is different language, in Nagaland there is different language. So linguistic diversity we are studying here. We are studying about variety of customs. Let me give you some examples of very bizarre customs prevalent in India. There is the custom of head hunting. There was a custom of head hunting among some Naga tribes, right? That means the Naga tribesmen, that particular tribe, they hunt the men and keep their head on the spear outside their house, just to showcase that how powerful that person is. So the number of spears make the person a better, much better, more powerful man. So there are variety of customs. You can find some other customs even in India, right? Female genital mutilation is a kind of custom found in the Wahra community, right? There are many other customs that you might have encountered during your own experiences. You can think about them. Now, these customs, these languages and these races, according to Tyler, he says, of the primitive people. Now, who are these primitive people? Primitive people, according to him, is the simple tribal societies, the indigenous people who live in forests, right? Who are not civilized basically, according to him, right? We know that there are tribes in India. You might have heard of many of the tribes, Bhil, right? You might have heard of other tribes, Santals, Gonds, Khonds, Kond, Malair, right? Bagda, all these tribes, you might have heard of these tribes. So he is talking about that it is the study of primitive people. So what we are studying earlier, we say that it is a study of animal aspect, it is the aspect, social aspect, and even there was, that cultural aspect that Britannica has said. Now he is talking about the study of all these aspects of primitive people. Don't you think he narrowed it down? Right? He narrowed it down only to the primitive people. So this is a question to ask, that whether we must, do you think that anthropology does not study us? It studies only tribes, even only the backward people, Nicobaris, Sentinelese, right? That is a question to ask that we will discuss when we come up with the holistic definition here. Now, he is also talking about it is the study of all the remains of people. Right? So all the remains of people, that means whatever was left behind by our ancestors. So it is, a little bit, it is talking about the archaeological aspect. So past, right? Past tools, artifacts, antiquarian remains that were left behind by our ancestors. He says that it studies that also. Right? So a little bit more clarity you can see in these 5-6 aspects: animal, social and cultural aspect, right? Primitive people, this is a question to ask. Past, right? Even Tyler is talking about the language, right? So that is one important observation from him. Now let us move on to some other definitions, what they try to say. Try to grasp the meaning, whatever these people are trying to say. Okay. Next is Paul Broca. Paul Broca is also known as father of physical anthropology, right? So he is giving the definition of anthropology. Paul Broca. He says he primarily defined physical anthropology, biological anthropology you can say, right? The difference we will make out later on. Both physical and biological anthropology is used interchangeably, but there is a difference that you will understand even in today's lecture itself. So Tyler says that, Broca says that it is defined as the study of men at all levels. So here you can say it is a study of men at all levels. Now, what are these levels that we are talking about? Tyler says it is only restricted to the primitive people. Here Broca says it is not restricted to the primitive people, rather all levels are being studied under this. Now, after Broca, there are other scholars, and the prominent among them are the very big names in anthropology. Frank Boas. Then after Frank Boas, there is, Malinowski, Radcliffe Brown. Please do write these names. These names will be very, very useful for you people. What these people say, these you can consider these as, the core of this discipline, anthropology. Unless you understand these few people and their works, you cannot understand anthropology properly. So they defined anthropology as the study of men at all levels of development. They also says in the same way. They were inspired by the, wordings of Paul Broca, you can say in one sense, right? So they defined the study of men at all levels. Now these people are using the word men, right? So it is not only men, but we know that men sometimes is perceived as, neglecting the female version, female part of humans, right? So we cannot say like this. Next is you can say this definition given by Harkowitz. Harkowitz was also an American anthropologist, and he basically was inspired by the definition of anthropology given by Alfred Kroeber. Now what Alfred Kroeber has to say, Alfred Kroeber says that anthropology is the study of men. Anthropology is the study of men, his works and behavior, right? So Harkowitz was inspired from him, and he wrote a book, Men and His Work. Men and His Work. And in this book, Men and His Works, he says that anthropology is the study of men, that means the biological being, and his works, that whatever you see outside, जो भी आप देखते हो, whether it is the cultural institutions, social institutions, belief, morals, art, right, even the technology that you see, all these are the constructions of humans, right? So men and his work, that is basically the definition given by Harkowitz. He was inspired from the definition given by Alfred Kroeber. Kroeber was very famous American anthropologist and a disciple of Frank Boas, right? You can say Harkowitz was a disciple of Kroeber further, right? And he gave that it is a study of man and his works. Kroeber says it is the study of man, his works and his behavior. Okay. After him, there is another definition given by Clyde Cluckon in his book Mirror for Men, right? Clyde Cluckon, he defined anthropology as the mirror for men. Anthropology is the mirror for men. That means जब आप mirror के सामने खड़े होते हैं, whenever you stand in front of the mirror, so you get an opportunity to see about yourself in an infinite variety of ways. So in the similar way, anthropology is the mirror for men, which gives an opportunity to the man to look at himself in infinite variety of ways. It generates infinite curiosity about human beings. आप अपने बारे में बहुत तरीके से सोच सकते हो. So don't you think it's very, very broad? It's very deep, right? So in his book, Mirror for Men, everything is written, these definitions are written in our book that you are going to receive, right? Now, on the basis of all these definitions, and one more definition let me give you, right? And that will be final for us. I will not give you much of an headache after that, right? So there is another American anthropologist, scholar, Marvin Harris. So in his book, Theories of Culture in Postmodern Times, he wrote that definition of anthropology. He says that anthropology is the study, you must write this definition, it is not given, I deliberately kept it. So Theories of Culture in Postmodern Times, this is the name of book, written by Marvin Harris, American anthropologist. So what Marvin Harris has to say, Marvin Harris को आप बाद में भी पढ़ेंगे. There is a school of thought associated with him, which is named as cultural materialism, right? So what he has to say, he says that it is the study of all aspects. It is the study of all aspects of the whole humankind in all places and at all times. So this is the definition given by the Marvin Harris. So it is the study of all aspects of whole humankind in all places and at all times, right? So basically ये levels वाली बात होगी, अब all aspects की बात होगी. That means if suppose we are missing something, right? If we are saying that only animal origin, social aspect, cultural, we may be missing something. So he summarized everything, right? Marvin Harris summarized everything by saying that all aspects of the entire humankind. That means आप इंडिया में रहते हो, इंडिया में भी आप ट्राइबल रीजन में रहते हो, नॉर्थ ईस्ट में रहते हो, या फिर जम्मू एंड कश्मीर में रहते हो, आप पाकिस्तान में रहते हो, अफगानिस्तान में रहते हो, आप यूरोप में रहते हो, आप ब्राजील में रहते हो, everything, whole mankind, right? And the term that he used is whole mankind, सब किसी का, पूरा mankind, whether you are men, you are women, or you are an intersex, it covers everything, right? Then after that he also says that in all places, what I just said all places, that means whether you are in Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, wherever you want to think, all places and all times. That means whether it is past, whether it is present, whether it is the archaeological study, or whether it is the paleoanthropological study, everything is part of anthropology. Now, these scribbles will give you some idea. Let me talk about this. Now, let us think about these words that we have, tried to extract out of these definitions and make something constructive out of it, right? These words we have picked from various definitions that we have gone through, right? So you may get some idea, some detailed idea, right? It studies animal aspect, social aspect, cultural aspect, and here Marvin Harris says all aspects. So all aspects of mankind, right? And that aspect may be language, that may be your myths, rituals and everything, whatever you can think, right? Of whole humankind, matlab kiska? Whole humankind. That means it gives you an idea that it is universalistic. It is the universal study of mankind, right? Then it gives you idea about all places. That means it is the regional study. It covers entire world, right? And all times. That means whether it is past, whether it is present, or you can think of the future direction also. So it is the study of all aspects of humankind, whole humankind, at all places and all times. So Marvin Harris summarized this very well, right? He summarized this in a wonderful way so that we can understand what anthropology is. Now, even after looking at this, you need a little bit more clarity. How? Let me tell you. There are various aspects of mankind. I'm just erasing this. There are various aspects of humankind, and those aspects we have dealt just now, right? That aspect, if you talk about the biological aspect, you can talk about the social aspect, you can talk about the linguistic aspect, you can talk about the cultural aspect, right? And within them also there can be subdivisions. So do you think that anthropology see biology separately from the socio-cultural aspects, or it sees everything in an integrated manner, That means when I speak, this language, the way I use the word, right? The word, जो मैंने word बोला, यही word, you understood this, right? Whatever I am trying to convey, you are making sense of it. So do you think this language that I am speaking don't have anything to do with the biology, human biology? Right? कुछ लोगों के सर में चोट लग जाती है, right? Due to that head injury, they cannot speak, right? Or they cannot articulate complete sentences. That indicates that there is some area in the brain that helps us to speak, right? And we all know that we have a very complex vocal cords, right? These vocal cords and the areas in brain helps us to speak. But whatever we speak, you make sense of it. The language that I use, you make sense of it, and this language that we have learnt is a product of our social learning as well. So anthropology do not study these aspects, all aspects of mankind separately. Rather, it studies everything in an integrated manner. That means one is related to the other and the other is related to the other, right? So one thing that it studies all aspects, that means it is holistic, right? Holistic means it covers everything, whatever is there related to men is being studied by anthropology. But this holism is not without integration, right? That means it studies one aspect by relating it to the other. Biological aspect of mankind is related to the socio-cultural aspect. I have just shown you that, right? How biology is related to a language, right? And you know that आप अगर बचपन से दूसरे देश में पैदा हुए होते तो आपकी लैंग्वेज वैसी ही होती, right? And suppose if you live in jungle like Mowgli of Jungle Book, you may not learn the human language despite of the fact that you have the developed brain and the developed vocal cords, right? There have been case studies like this, right, about some kids who were living in jungle from the childhood, so they cannot learn the language, the human language. So that shows that language is a product of the social learning as well. So here what we are saying, that it is holistic as well as integrated. One more example I can give you about this biology and social integration. You know that family, we all live in a family, right? Mother, father, your siblings. Now, this family have also its genesis in the biological evolution of mankind. Now, how come that comes under the evolution? Basically, you know that apes, they walk on the four limbs, not like this, not like us that they walk on two legs. They walk on four limbs. And when they walk on four limbs, right, they have their body designed in that manner, everything, even their genitals is designed in such a way. But when we stand erect, right, when we stand erect, then the birth canal of women, it get narrowed, right? The birth canal of women, it get narrow ho gaya. And from that narrow birth canal, the fully developed human baby cannot come out, because we know that we have a very large and complex brain. So this large brain cannot come out in full developed form from that narrow birth canal of human women, right? So if it cannot come out as the fully developed, that means that the child will be dependent on the mother, on the father. At the same time, when the birth canal is narrow, then this labor or giving birth has become a very painful process. That means the mother also needs someone to take care. The mother is dependent, the child is dependent. That requires a support. So here this biological evolution led to the origin of this family, institution of family, right? So here you can see that how biology have influenced our socio-cultural institutions. Similarly, there are other examples that you will learn in the course, right, slowly and steadily. So I believe you can understand that it is study of all aspects, but in an integrated manner, right? Next, now this you understand that it studies in an integrated manner. Now let me tell you some other examples. You know that biologically the people live in Europe differ from those live in Africa, those live in India or China, right? Now if anthropology studies everything, that means anthropology also compare these people, right? Whether on the basis of their biology or on the basis of the kind of marriage practices they adopt, the kind of families they live in, the kind of the descent or kinship organizations they have. So it is the comparative study also, right? It compares. People live in different habitats, different countries, different cultures, right? Now we also have seen that it is all times, right? So it compares temporally also, right? It compares the societies of past to the societies of present, right? So this is also thing you can think of in a comparative manner. And the final thing that I am trying to say, that it is the historical study as well, right? I believe now it started making much better sense for you that what anthropology exactly is. So now if I can say that anthropology is the systematic, that systematic comes from scientific, right? Because the word logos says it is the systematic study, scientific study. It is systematic, holistic, that means all aspects of mankind, integrated, comparative, historical and universal study of all aspects of mankind at all times and all parts of the world. I believe now this definition makes much better sense for you people. Now, broadly if you see, this is the definition that I want to tell you, that this is anthropology. Okay, now let me tell you one broader understanding so that you can make a little bit more sense of it. Again, I'm a little bit narrowing down for you so that you can make better sense out of it, right? When I was saying that it is the study of all aspects, so I'm taking two aspects, right? I'm taking two aspects just to tell you how you can think. Right, the first aspect you can take is biological aspect. The second is socio-cultural aspect. I am combining both of them in the broader sense, and that study of these two main aspects that we can see, we are biological being and we live in society, right? So across time and space, you can say it is temporal study, right, and it is the spatial study. Okay, so biological study over time, what it tells us? It tells us about the evolution of man, right? From whom? From apes, right, to modern men, right? So what we are studying here in anthropology, we are studying the evolution of men from the ancestors, and we believe that our ancestors are apes. The closest ancestors are apes. Okay, and this evolution we study using various branches of knowledge. Paleontology. Paleontology is the study of fossils. Paleoanthropology. I'm just telling you about these terms so that you can make better sense out of it. Paleontology. Paleontology is the study of fossils. Other term is paleoanthropology. Paleoanthropology is the study of human fossils. Paleo means ancient, extinct fossils, right? Paleoprimatology, right? Primates, we humans are primates, right? And paleo means who are extinct primates, unki study bhi paleoprimatology. Along with that, we study primatology. We study the living primates, how they behave. This year there was a question on this primatology, right? There was a question on one famous anthropologist, famous primatologist Jane Goodall, and her contribution. That is why you must understand, we will study that separately also, primatology. So all these things, they tell us about the human evolution, right? Now, even the kind of diseases that we encounter, right? The comparative anatomical study of men and other primates also comes under this, to understand the human evolution over the time. So biological study over time tells us about the evolution of men. Now, biological study, biological aspect is studied over space. What it tells us about? It tells us about the diversity of people, right? This diversity you see in the form of races, right? There is Caucasoid race, there is Mongoloid race, there is Negroid race, so all these variations that exist in human biology, it is being studied under anthropology, right? You can see that the color of people living in Europe differs from the people live in Africa, right? So that is the part of here. Next is socio-cultural part. Now the socio-cultural aspect studied over time. So here you know that the people, our ancestors, they do not have air conditioners. They do not have artificial intelligence technology, right? And you might have heard that people in past, they were practicing polygamy. There were many bizarre institutions human sacrifice, sati, right? And even the religious practices were different. So here, now we can think that over the time, our kind of marriage practices, the kind of family that people live in past, they were joint families more, but now people are nuclear families, right? So over time, what we try to study? We try to study the evolution of culture, evolution of society, evolution of technology, how technology diffused from one place to the other, right? How technology moved, the scientific or you can say industrial revolution. It started with some scientific inventions and then it spread across the world. So here we are talking about the change in the socio-cultural aspect over time, right? So you can say evolution of culture. Technology, right? Etc. is being studied here. Now over space, you know that the society and culture of the tribal people differ from their society and culture in the urban centers, right? The society and culture of America differs from the culture of Europe and that differ from Latin America. So we study the variations or the diversity in the socio-cultural institutions and practices across the globe in this. So here what this thing tells you, you can better understand here that how you will see over time and over space. I believe now you can make a better and much deeper sense in the definition of anthropology. We are moving very slowly in the beginning because you have to accept various terms and jargons of this discipline. So I believe that you are making sense out of it now. Okay, so within some time we will assemble again in 5-10 minutes and we will move forward after that with scope of anthropology and we will move further. Thank you. Okay, so now from the definition that we have discussed very elaborately, I believe you can make much better sense now. Okay, and from here we will move on to the scope of anthropology. We will move on to the scope of anthropology. Okay, see, scope, that means what anthropology covers. And you know, just now you have seen what anthropology is, right? Anthropology is a science, you can say. It's a discipline of study that we were discussing here. Okay? Don't you think along with the study there are some people who practice anthropology? That means there are practitioners, right? So anthropology is a profession also. So when you are going to see the scope of this discipline, when you are trying to understand the scope of this discipline, so you have to think from both perspectives. Most of you, whenever you try to understand the scope, right, and even in the books, you will find the scope is four major specializations of anthropology that was by Frank Boas, and the fifth one is the application of all these four, right? So physical anthropology, which studies the physical aspect of mankind in a holistic manner, socio-cultural anthropology, linguistic anthropology, and archaeological anthropology. Right? So, this you have to talk about the scope in these 4 major specializations and the applications which come in anthropology. Advocacy anthropology. Advocating for the rights of some marginalized sections comes under advocacy anthropology. Developmental anthropology, action anthropology. You know, these names, they basically deals with the applications of the theories and practices developed under these 4 major heads, right? So this is, you can say, the scope here in the study part, and it comes under a little bit under this practice part. Now, when you talk about this scope of anthropology, is it limited? As E.B. Tyler says, that he was restricting the scope to the primitive people only, right? Whereas we have seen other people like Framboise, Malinowski, Brown, and these people say that it is not restricted to the primitive people, rather all levels of development. Now, which are the levels of development? That can be the savage people who live, who subsist on hunting gathering, barbaric people, right, or the civilization. These are the 3 major, levels that was suggested by Montesquieu, Enlightenment thinker. Okay, he suggested these 3 hierarchies, 3 levels of development of mankind, 3 levels of evolution of mankind, in which he says the first stage was savage stage, जिसमें कि इंसान जो है हंटिंग गैदरिंग और ये सब करता था. बारबेरिक स्टेज उसके बाद, ठीक है, जो भी मूवीज वगैरह भी आप देखते होंगे दैट जिसमें कि बारबेरिक एक काइंड ऑफ a kind of a tag attached to bad behavior also, a violent behavior, right? So savage, barbaric, and finally civilization, the civilized world, that so-called civilized world in which we live in. So this is what we can see on the scope of the anthropology, right? Now there were many views. I will come on to this, that how we can think. I'm just giving you some idea to think, how you can think on the scope. So scope can be thought through that what it studies, right, as a discipline of study. And second thing is the practice part, profession, as a profession. So as a profession, anthropology deals with human development, right, countering stigmas, right, it is a myth buster, right, it busts various kinds of myths prevalent in the society, right. आप हर एक सोसाइटी में अलग अलग तरीके के मिथ्स होते हैं. किसी में suppose women, she should not touch the plow. जो हल होता है, plow होता है farmer का, she should not touch that. That is prevalent in many tribes in central India. In Toda tribe, women cannot enter the dairy where buffaloes are kept. So there are many kind of myths. If they touch those things, right, they are tabooed also. On the basis of these myths, that if they do something like this, then something bad will happen. So on the basis of these myths, certain taboos are prevalent, right? And these taboos sometimes lead to human right violation. आपने एक वो मूवी भी देखी होगी, पैडमैन, right? So menstruating women was not allowed to enter in the house. That is a kind of myth and associated taboos, right? These myths are busted by the objective knowledge of anthropology. The casteism, regionalism, communalism, these can be countered using the knowledge of anthropology. Now let us move one by one how you can understand the scope, right? So let me tell you a deeper insight into it. How will you write it? Answer writing part we will deal once we understand these topics. Okay, so scope. Scope of anthropology can be dealt under the 5 headings, right? So all the 4 headings that we have discussed here. The 5th one is the applied anthropology, right? So physical anthropology, socio-cultural anthropology, linguistic anthropology, and archaeological anthropology, and their applications, or you can say applied anthropology, right? So now after even this, I have told you that it can be studied under 2 broad headings. In this you can apply these 2 as a discipline, right, of study that deals with theory building or theoretical perspective, and other thing is the profession that deals with the application of these theories, right, application part. Other than that, you can think that whether this scope of anthropology is limited to the simple societies as suggested by Tyler, or it is universalistic. So what I am suggesting you, I am giving you 3 lines of thought when you talk about the scope of anthropology. See, many of your peers will be writing only and only about these things. They may not be able to think in this direction. So I am allowing you to brainstorm, to think and to analyze in these directions. Now let me give you some idea that what scholars have to say. Amber and Amber, very famous book, all of you must be reading, and our notes will include everything that is necessary for you to understand, even from the advanced books, right? So what Amber and Amber has to say, they say Amber and Amber, they say that anthropologists have not always been global and comprehensive in their concerns as they are today, right? So basically this line that I have just uttered, that anthropologists have not been always global and comprehensive in their concerns as they are today, that indicates that today anthropology is much wider in scope than in the past, right? And that justifies what Tyler has to say, right? Tyler say that anthropology ka scope jo hai, it is limited to the study of primitive people, all the aspects of primitive people, right? So you can say, according to Tyler, the scope of anthropology was limited to the study of primitive societies, primitive people, right? Amber and Amber in his statement says that its scope Today it is global and comprehensive, right? Comprehensive means it includes everything. In the initial definitions, we do not find this comprehension, this much depth, this much width, right? But now we have. So Amber and Amber say it was not there earlier. What Amber says, they say it was earlier limited to the study of non-Western cultures. Non-Western cultures, that means non-Western cultures like culture of India. That is non-Western culture, right? The simple cultures, right? Not the complex societies which have well written history. जिनकी recorded history नहीं थी, उनकी study थी. So they say earlier it was restricted to the study of non-Western societies like our society, right? The society of Polynesia, Southeast Asia, okay, and without recorded history, which are without recorded history. What is history? History is the chronological account of the past, right? And you know that prehistory, proto-history and history, these are the three divisions when you study history. So prehistory is the history without text, जहाँ पे कुछ भी लिखा हुआ नहीं है. We try to understand the past of that prehistorical period, like Stone Ages are prehistorical. So how will we understand that prehistorical period? By understanding those tools, stone tools or any other artifact available. Some paintings are available. So we try to understand in that way. The second portion was proto-history. We try to, in that period, we have language, we have that script, but that script is not deciphered. For example, that Harappan script, it is yet to be deciphered. And if we cannot decipher it, that period in which we have script and is yet to be deciphered is proto-historical period, and history is the period with understandable readings, right? वो जो book, वो जो लिखा हुआ जो हम समझ सकते हैं, that is there. So what Amber says that it is the earlier it was restricted to the non-Western societies and cultures, and where there was no recorded history, right? That was that focus. Now this is not there. Now its scope is global and its scope is comprehensive. That means it studies the urban societies, industrial societies, even it try to study that how will people live in space. जो अभी एक नासा का प्रोजेक्ट चल रहा है जिसमें कि they are inviting 4 people to live in a Mars kind of habitat. You might have read that in the newspapers. वहाँ पे भी how the human behavior will be, that is also part of anthropology now, right? So it is very complex, very wide nowadays. Okay. So according to Amber, it is wide. Similarly, what Amber say, Amber, the words of French Boas Malinowski is resonating in that of Amber's words also, right? They say, oh, way back in the past, in the beginning of 20th century, Boas, Malinowski and Brown has already said that it is the study of men at all levels of development. Similarly, Amber also says the same thing, right? But because Amber and Amber is a book that almost all of you must have seen that, or at least have heard of it, so I'm quoting that. Yeah. So now the scope we will try to understand using these 4 major heads, 4 major specializations, and you know that physical anthropology here, what it studies. Physical anthropology is the holistic and integrated study of the physical or biological aspect of mankind at all times and all places, right? The same definition of anthropology we are adapting to this, right? Here in physical anthropology or biological anthropology, our focus is on understanding human evolution, our understanding of the variations that exist in humankind, the variety of races that we have. You know that you may have better adaptation to one disease, the other may not have that level of adaptation. And this research is presently going on in understanding the impact of COVID on some people, and some people are safe. There was a text, write-up in the Hindu also, right, which is talking about the Neanderthal DNA present in our modern human race, right. This race word don't try to take in that context, right. So basically what I am saying, that in our modern human species there is some aspects of Neanderthal DNA. So that study was focusing on that some people are more resistant to this disease than the others, right. So here our focus is on the study of evolution of man as a biological being. So scope studies the evolution, scope studies the diversity or variations that exist, okay. It also studies the genetic aspect, right. Genetic aspect means how we are built, okay. What is our genome, what is the gene pool of our population. These are the three terms. Let me elaborate, since it is the first class in which I must elaborate on each term. Gene is a sequence of human DNA. It's a sequence on human DNA which represent a particular trait. Okay? So you can say gene in simplest sense, it is sequence of nucleotide, right? Now nucleotide, you can say DNA is a nucleotide, right, that we will discuss later on because I cannot elaborate on everything. So a gene is a sequence of nucleotide that represent a particular trait. That trait can be your eye color, that can be your skin color, that can be any particular, like you have A blood group, you have B blood group, O blood group, all these that represent a particular trait. Now genome is the assemblage of all genes that you have in your body, right, that is called as your genome, right. The collection of all genes is genome, and the collection of all genes in a population is known as gene pool of that population, right. So that also comes under this physical anthropology or biological anthropology. Here it studies human growth and development and how various factors like genetics and environment play a role in growth and development. That is also the core of physical anthropology. It also talks about human adaptations, that we know that we live in variety of habitats, whether it is the cold polar regions where Eskimos live in minus 30-40 degree centigrade temperature. We know that people live in even Siachen glacier. We have deployed our soldiers to guard against the incursion from the Pakistani army. How people are adapted to that? You might have seen some videos few years back. Because of one accident we lost many Jawans also and it's a very tough terrain, but there are many people, Tibetan people who were adapted, people in Leh, they were adapted to the low oxygen environment, very cold environment. We know that people live in the equatorial and hot and humid regions. We know that people live in desert region, that also make the part of this. We have already discussed that some people are resistant to some diseases and some are not. So disease resistance is also the aspect to study. You recently have seen these Olympics, right? And you know that Neeraj Chopra, he threw the javelin to 87 meters approximately. Now, how we can understand that what kind of techniques one should adopt, and what are the bodily requirements? Is he genetically more endowed? That means his genetic constitution is much better than others, or it is just the training, diet, technique which was responsible. So selecting best player, selecting the best technique or best training methods, which muscle is to be, developed. Okay. All these things comes under anthropology, physical anthropology. Kinanthropometry. Kinanthropometry is a branch of anthropology, which is basically the anthropology of sports, right? You and me may wear a similar size of shirt, right? 42 size आप पहन सकते हो. Some people have, maybe we may not be similar in our shoulder or chest size or our waist size or our height, but still two people can wear similar shirt size. How these companies, these industries develop these standards that you go to a market shop and you can buy, both can wear it fit. How? They must be taking some measurements of your body, right? L size, XL size and all these size. How many people of this variety of sizes they fit into them. So basically they are also taking help of physical anthropologists, and that comes under one branch, anthropometry. That means measurement of body sizes, body portions you can say, right? Then there is another area of study that also makes part of this is your forensics, right? Recently, one rape and murder case of a 9-year-old child, girl child, is in news. So such things, such heinous crimes can be solved using forensic anthropology, right? Here, the biological anthropological knowledge is used to solve the legal cases, crimes. We can establish paternity. We can know from a pile of bodies that this body belonged to which person, that person belonged to which race, whether he or she was murdered earlier or what was the time of death, right? So these all comes under that scope of physical anthropology, right? Next comes your socio-cultural anthropology, and here in this we can talk about various things, right? And what are those things that we can talk here? We can talk about the society and culture, right? So one thing is the evolution and variations, simply evolution of society, variations in the society, right? Everything is given in the book. Don't worry that I have provided to you people. Everything is available, whatever I speak here, right? Some of the things that you need to write it down, and that you can paste everything on the book. That will be very, very good for you, right? So evolution and variation in the society and cultural institutions. It talks about the evolution of culture. Now, not only this, it talks about the variety of myths, traditions, right? And how people organize politically, how people subsist, that means mode of production and institutions are being studied under this, right? This is also studying the gender relations, that means male and female, from variety of perspectives. This gender relations, when we are talking about gender relations are being studied by socio-cultural anthropology, so it studies from the social point of view, that what is the social position of male vis-a-vis female, what is the economic position of male vis-a-vis female, what is the religious privileges available to male or females, are there any disabilities imposed on female because of their being female, right? Or what is the power dynamics between the gender? So gender relations also comes under this. We also study social dynamics or cultural dynamics, right? In which we study the change aspect of society and culture. We study the power dynamics, the distribution of power among different groups or religious groups. So that power dynamics also is an aspect of study of this socio-cultural anthropology. We study sexuality. Nowadays, there is a very heated debate on the matter of gender, sexuality, right? The sexual orientation. So this sexual orientation, do you think it has some biological angle in it? Just think over it. We can discuss when it comes to it someday, right? Diaspora, we know that Indians live in USA, Indians live in other Latin American countries and in some Indian Ocean countries. So that diaspora, Indian diaspora or the diaspora of any other nation, also how they are connected, how they are living with their tradition, how they have adapted to the different customs and traditions, that also comes under socio-cultural aspect, right? Migration and the crisis created by migration, Rohingya Muslim crisis or any other kind of migration crisis, right? You know that due to the disturbances and turbulence in northern Africa after this Arab Spring, many people are started migrating towards Europe. Now there is a problem in Syria and all these areas which is still persisting. So people are still migrating. That migration crisis, the basic fundamental reasons of it, the consequences of it, and what can be the remedial measure. So all this comes under this socio-cultural branch. So anthropology is not just studying for the sake of study. Rather, the purpose is to apply the theories and knowledge for remedying the situation, for solving human problems, right? Whether this problem can be casteism, regionalism, and all these problems that you encounter. So, whether it is the issue of tribal development, whether it is the issue of women empowerment, all of this will be covered under this socio-cultural anthropology. When you apply the knowledge of this socio-cultural anthropology, then, because I told you that this profession and application part, that is why I have written all these things here, right? So this comes under socio-cultural anthropology. The third branch is linguistic anthropology, right? And you know that we speak, right? And what we speak, it has a meaning. This language, the way I move my hands, the way I see, I wave my head or neck, right? The neck gestures you might have seen on WhatsApp and all of a very famous actor. This actor, I think, Pankaj Tripathi, right? So these gestures, the eye movement, the neck movement, the hand movement, and it is being said and proved by theoreticians, scholars, anthropologists, and the communication experts. They say that 90% of our communication is from the non-verbal means, just 10% we express through the words. If I stop waving my hands, so my 90% of my communication will stop. Only 10% you can grasp using my words, and that is why most of you prefer offline classes, because in offline class you can perceive more, you can understand more of my gestures, of the way I want to communicate, right? But this is the near best that we have as of now. Once the government allows, we can sit in the class and can enjoy the class in much better way. So we are hoping that soon we can get that enjoyment of sitting together. Okay, so linguistic anthropology, it talks about the origin and variations of language, right? Origin, evolution. You must know that at some point in time, during the course of human evolution, the language must have evolved, and the languages of various places varies. So these variations in languages, right? Anthropology studies the structural component of language, right? Because the language that we speak, it has some words, right? These words are arranged through grammar to make a particular sense, right? So these structural components of language are also being studied. Now, whatever I speak here, when I say ठीक है, this ठीक है word makes sense for a Hindi person, right? It may not make the same sense for the other people, right? So whatever I just said was in a particular context, right? So the language and the cultural context, language and cultural context, this relationship is also being studied under this branch. So it also is the part of linguistic anthropology, or you can say the scope of linguistic anthropology, right? Do you know that the structure of a language, the way you speak, the structure of your language, it influences your cultural behavior, the way you behave, right? This is a hypothesis given by Edward Sapir and Lee Worf. This was a question asked in this year's mains, anthropology paper 1, Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which simply says that the structure of your language influences the cultural behavior. The way you behave is influenced by the structure of your language, and that structure you picked up during your enculturation. Enculturation means the way you imbibed culture during your growing up years. Apne mata pita, your parents, your siblings, your school, you picked up variety of these things. That structural component, right? That structure of your language influence your thought and your behavior. Okay. It also talks about non-verbal communication. It also talks about how we gained this language. It also talks about the power dynamics, right? Because the way leaders speak, the way one addresses his or her boss, the way we address our parents, right? That shows the hierarchy, right? that tells us about the relationship those two people have. So linguistic anthropology also studies that, right? अगर आप अपने बॉस से बात कर रहे हैं, अपने टीचर से बात कर रहे हैं, अपने पेरेंट्स से बात कर रहे हैं, then you will address them in a particular way by certain words, respectable words. That tells us about the power dynamics between the two, right? And the cultural context will be provided. अगर आप दो लोगों को बात करते हुए सुने, right? You can make out whether they are friends or they are employee-employer or they are enemies. So you can understand the cultural context by just listening to their words. That is the ethnography of communication, right? By understanding the communication, you can understand that what it tells us about the people, right? So there are many important linguists, Gumpes, Delheims, and all these people, right, who did elaborate research on this that we will discuss, right? Then finally we have archaeological anthropology. Now, archaeological anthropology, it studies the artifacts, tools, antiquarian remains, and not only just study them, right? Archaeological anthropology basically deals with the excavation, identification, collection, and interpretation of the antiquarian remains, or you can say past remains, past tools which have been left behind by our ancestors in the past. Now our purpose here is to understand those remains so that we can find out that what those people have lived their life, what they ate, how they cook, what are the utensils used by them in cooking, what kind of technologies they have, what kind of social institutions they might have, whether the society was divided in hierarchical ranks or it was an egalitarian society. Using all those remains, we try to understand that, and this is also under the scope of anthropology. So this is the scope under the four major heads, and now it is not only restricted to these four heads, rather the application, because we are not studying language just for the sake of study. Rather, we try to understand that how we can preserve the dying languages, right? There are many languages which are dying. According to UNESCO, the language which is spoken by less than 10,000 people is an endangered language. So there are many endangered languages in India, and our purpose here through applied anthropology is to conserve those languages, right? So this is the application of that knowledge. Archaeological anthropology, we have many museums, we have many historical monuments, we have many cultural records, and those records are being lost. So here we have public archaeology that is basically spreading the word, spreading awareness about that how we can preserve, how that society, the people can be made aware about their own heritage. That is the relevance here. Socio-cultural, you know that we can deal with the communalism, casteism, regionalism, ethnic violence, all these things, right? We can counter racism. In biological anthropology, you can deal with many diseases like even COVID here. Many genetic abnormalities can be dealt, right? You can use it in the anthropology of sports and all these things. So I believe I made it pretty clear through that, right? Okay, so after that, let me move on to the history and development of anthropology, right? we are moving slowly. The reason is that I want to tell you about all the basics, right? I am opening your mind to think in a particular direction, right? And if you are paying heed, that can be very, very useful for you in coming days, right? That is why the first class I always take a little time, right? And slowly and steadily, when you are familiar with these words, so we can move a little bit faster. Now, history and development. So, we have discussed earlier that Aristotle, right? We started the definition with Aristotle. Okay? Aristotle was a Greek scholar, right? And who gave the very first definition of anthropology, who says that anthropology is a gossip which revolves around men, and anthropologist is a gossiper. Do you think Aristotle के टाइम से एंथ्रोपोलॉजी शुरू हुई थी? Or tell me how old anthropology is? Do you think we humans who have a brain capacity of 1400 cc, बाइक भी 200-250 cc की आती है, right? This much capacity of human brain, this modern man, Homo sapiens. So the modern man waited until Aristotle came into the light and start thinking about that how we are, from where we came into being, how we behave, right? Do you think he was the very first person? Or people before them had no curiosity at all? They were not thinking about anything. They were just busy eating and sleeping. I believe that we humans, we modern men, Homo sapiens, are curious from the very beginning, from the very first day, right? We are curious about ourselves. And what Clyde Clecon has to say, that this curiosity comes under anthropology. The curiosity about ourselves, how we think, why we think, what we do, how we do, why we do, right? Why we behave in a particular manner, that makes the subject matter of anthropology, right? So, we are curious about ourselves from the very first day of our origin, we can say in one sense, right? So, it is not Aristotle who was the first anthropologist, you can say, right? Just सबसे पहले humans they were curious about themselves, right? So, anthropology is the infinite curiosity about human beings, and we human beings are curious about ourselves from the origin of humanity itself, from the origin of human beings itself, right? So, that can be one thing. Even if you want to go into the written sense, right? So, even before Aristotle, Herodotus was a Greek scholar, right? And he traveled very, very widely across the Greek colonies along the Mediterranean Sea, right? Along the Mediterranean Sea, and there he tried to understand the human diversity, right? Human variations. So the first anthropological oriented study is attributed to Herodotus even before Aristotle. उसके बाद में Aristotle आते हैं, right? So the first anthropological oriented description or the study is attributed to Herodotus. Herodotus is also known as father of history, right? The Histories is the book written by him. The Histories is the book written by him. Okay, so Herodotus is considered as the first anthropologist, right? What I have told you, that curiosity about ourselves is as old as ourselves. हम जितने पुराने हैं उतनी पुरानी ये curiosity है. That means anthropology is as old as the humanity itself. But if you want to talk about the first writings, first compilation, so it is Herodotus who started talking about the human variations, human diversity, right? He basically he studied in 5th century BC, and he talked about many things, right? He raised some questions, and what those questions were, I have given some of them in our book, that how the climate of a place alter or affect our physique, our other characteristics like our skin color, our height, all these things, how they are being altered by the climate. That is the fundamental question asked by Herodotus. The other things that we can attribute to him, he talks about how diet affects growth. We all know that is a very relevant question. How climate affect the characteristics or physique, how diet affect growth, that means nutrition. Nowadays, the nutrition anthropologist, or nutrition is a very important factor for India nowadays, right? Malnutrition and all. These two are biological anthropology related questions that he asked, right? The third question that he asked is that is father the natural head of the family or mother? He must have encountered some of these kind of traditions, customs, in which somewhere mother may be the leader of the family. There may be some matriarchal societies, right? In Greek at that time patriarchy was prevalent, right? And that is why most of the scholars of the time, even Aristotle was favoring the patriarchal theory, sorry. He was supporter of patriarchal theory. That means society is primarily patriarchal, right? But when you study further, you will find that earliest societies were matriarchal. That means mother was the head of the family. So Herodotus raised 3 relevant questions, right? Whether climate affect the physique, how diet affect the growth, and the third question is whether the natural head of the family is mother or father. That may not be relevant for you to write, but for understanding it is very important, because I have given 2 questions today, right? We may or may not cover everything regarding to those questions, but you will see that one of the question that where I have given is about that history and development of anthropology, right? Okay, so this Herodotus he's talking about these things. After him, Aristotle and all these people, they came into picture, right? And they started talking about anthropology. Okay, so what I was making a point here is that how old is anthropology? So anthropology, you can say in one sense, it is as old as the humanity, right? But what we study here, right? What we study in this discipline, in this you can say optional in civil services, we are not studying. We will find that our scholarly development, you can say the anthropologists, their contribution, we are just finding in the 19th century, after mid 19th century, right? Just after the beginning of Darwin's ideas, right? So how will we reconcile between the two? कैसे करें? एक साइड में बोला जा रहा है that anthropology is very old, and the second, our tangible findings, the writings that we observe is very new, right? So there is a debate whether anthropology is a very old discipline or it's a very young discipline, right? And since anthropology see things in a systematic or scientific manner, so if you try to see systematic things, scientific manner, then you require proof, right? And the proof says कि ये नया discipline है, it's a young discipline, because we have writings, anthropological oriented methodological writings is available from this time only, right? So now how we can write this? How we can talk about the history and development of this discipline, anthropology, right? Now here, when we are talking about the discipline of anthropology, we can talk in two broad sense. We can talk about this development in two broad sense, and what is that broad sense? One that you talk about here is the unsystematic beginning. Unsystematic beginning is traced back to this time, right? And after that you can talk about the Herodotus, you can talk about Aristotle, you can talk about after that the Renaissance period or Enlightenment period, right? But the systematic beginning of anthropology, you can trace it from the 19th century, mid of 19th century, after the publication of the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, right? After the publication of the Origin of Species, on the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. So from here we trace the systematic beginning, and after this publication there were many schools that have developed in anthropology. Many you can say thoughts have emerged, many scientific thoughts have emerged, and from there the first theory in anthropology came into being, that we call the classical evolutionism. Classical evolutionism, right? This was the first theory in anthropology that was given by a bunch of scholars, right, from Britain, USA or at that America, right, and the European or German scholars. They collectively gave this classical evolutionism, right, which says that cultures and societies across the world, they evolved in a unilinear fashion. जो cultures or societies हैं, they evolved in a unilinear fashion across the world. The second, after this theory, there were many theoretical developments, right? You may not be able to understand all the theories in one day. I'm just giving you some hints about these theories. So classical evolution says कि सभी जो societies हैं, they evolve in a unilinear manner throughout the world because of psychic unity of mankind. Psychic unity of mankind says that we all think in a similar manner in similar types of stimuli. अगर same stimuli मिलेगा तो हम same way में सोचते हैं, that is psychic unity. So classical evolutionism, which is given in 3 different continents, right, and that is basically main scholars is E.B. Tyler, L.H. Morgan and Bachophan and Bastian. All these scholars, they gave classical evolutionism. After that the theoretical development started, right, and the latest school in anthropology is postmodernism, right? The latest school in anthropology is postmodernism today. That evolutionary development in this theories we will talk in just a moment, right? But before going into this theoretical development, let me tell you a little more. We are dealing with the history and development in two broad headings, unsystematic beginning and the systematic beginning. The systematic beginning, we are starting with the publication of Darwinian ideas in 1859, right? And after this 1859, the first theory came into being was classical evolutionism, right, which was given by E.B. Tylor in Britain, L.H. Morgan in Americas, and Bachofen and Bastian in Germany, right? That was the first school of thought, and after that there was historical particularism which countered this classical evolutionism. After historical particularism there is diffusionism which also counters this classical evolutionism. Then there was functionalism, then there was culture personality school, neo-evolutionism, structuralism, symbolism, cultural materialism, and cognitive evolution, cognitive school, and then postmodernism in anthropology. So this is how the systematic development of anthropology took place through these schools, right? These schools, the theories that I have just named, you need not to worry at this moment because you may not understand them in one day, right? We have a separate portion of theories that we will discuss separately. So I am not burdening you here with those theoretical developments, but what I am trying to do here, I was trying to give you a broader perspective on this. Now, this broader perspective was put in perspective by T.K. Penniman. T.K. Penniman discussed the evolution, or you can say the development of anthropology as a discipline under 4 phases, right? And what those 4 phases are, let me share it with you. T.K. Penniman, he talks about the development of anthropology in his book 100 Years of Anthropology. 100 Years of Anthropology. In this book that he had written in 1935, right, he says that we can divide the development of anthropology under 4 phases. The first phase, according to him, was the formulatory phase. Formulatory phase. Okay. The second phase, according to him, was convergent phase. Third is constructive period or constructive phase. Fourth, according to him, was critical period or critical phase. Okay. Now, he gave a very well defined timeline also for them. He says that it is before 1835. Convergent period, according to him, was from 1835 to 1859. The publication of Darwin's book on the origin of species. The third phase, according to him, was from 1859 to 1900s. And the critical phase, according to him, was from 1900 to 1935 till the publication of his book. Right. This is a wonderful division. Let me elaborate upon that. Formulatory phase, convergent phase, constructive phase. So in formulatory phase, you can start from the very beginning, right? You can start from the times of Herodotus, okay, or whatever unsystematized anthropology was, whether it was the contribution of Immanuel Kant or other German philosophers, you can include everything that we have just discussed, even when we are discussing the definitions of anthropology. Then we are talking about the convergent phase. Here many scholars who inspired even Darwin, right? You can discuss about them. Now, who inspired Darwin? Right? Darwin was inspired by many of his contemporaries, right? Like one or two you can talk about is the Malthus essay, right? Malthus, who you may study in your population or demography, right? Russell Wallace, a famous biologist, also inspired him, right? His contemporary Herbert Spencer, a British sociologist and anthropologist, they have inspired and they have worked during that period. After that, after the publication of Darwin's idea, the social Darwinism and classical evolutionism was the dominant school in this period, right? In this period, you can quote the works of E.B. Tylor, you can quote the work of L.H. Morgan, you can quote the work of Bachofen and Bastian, right? All these people, they can be quoted in the constructive period. And finally, the critical period. After the publication of the books related to the classical evolutionism by the evolutionary thinkers, they say that all societies and cultures evolve in a unilinear manner across the world. And why they evolve in a unilinear manner? Because of the presence of psychic unity in the mankind, that men respond in a similar way to the similar stimuli. The stimuli can be environment, that means agar same tarah ka environment hai, then we will evolve in a similar manner, right? Why there is agriculture in many different places? Because wherever there was a favorable condition for agriculture, there is agriculture developed by men at different places, right? So in criticism to that classical evolutionary school, there were many schools that arose because they were countering the beliefs of this constructive phase, right, of that classical evolutionism. And here comes the historical particularism school of Frank Boas, who criticized the classical evolutionary thinkers on many counts. Then diffusionism, who countered classical evolutionism during that time. Then functionalism, who also discredited both classical evolutionism and diffusionism and historical particularism. And then comes the culture personality school. All these schools, they came during this time up to 1935. So, right. So this is the critical phase in which the thoughts, or you can say theories in anthropology, evolved much. But why you cannot cover everything in history and development with this scholar is because his work is restricted to 1935, and we have the latest school that developed in 1970s, 80s is the postmodernism, right? That is the latest school in anthropology. So you cannot cover everything using T.K. Penniman's reference, right? You can use that reference in one way, and then you better stick to this unsystematic and systematic definition, right? Many of the students, they do write this way. I believe that you can write this way also, but I advise those people that don't restrict yourself to 1935 only. You must tell at least the names of the schools that have developed after that, right? So that is it about the history and development, but we are not restricting ourselves to the history and development, right? We are going to talk about some of the comments given by some scholars, right? Because see, now when you are studying the history and development of anthropology, I gave you some idea, the unsystematic beginning and systematic beginning. But a deeper perspective will not be gained unless you understand some other points. Now, what are those points? I told you that the first school was developed in 1860s, right, in response to, you can say, Darwinism, right, in response to Darwinism. And now, was Darwinism only responsible for it, or there were any other factors which led to the anthropological oriented studies? That is a big question to ask, right? This unsystematic to systematic, this division we are talking with Darwinism. But how this transformation from unsystematic to systematic, right? This must not be supposed to a one-day process or two-day process. This must have involved some of the developments. Now, what those developments were, right? So, what had happened, right? What had happened, and how this unsystematic to systematic have emerged. So, let us start from the age of enlightenment, right? Age of enlightenment or age of reason, you can say. The age of enlightenment in Europe, or you can talk about Renaissance, right? Some of the history you must understand here. Now, during the age of enlightenment and Renaissance, right, and associated with that was the age of explorations. Age of explorations, or you can say voyages, right? ये सब समझोगे तब आप डार्विन पे आओगे, and then you can understand how systematized anthropology was. So what had happened during the age of enlightenment? Our emphasis was on region, human region. We started thinking we do not attribute everything to God and Bible, right? We stopped doing this. We are not attributing everything to God or Bible or the spiritual or religious understanding. We started questioning why, what, how, right? This Renaissance period. And people at this time, they started going abroad, across the oceans, right? In this age of exploration, Vasco da Gama, right? Columbus, Henry the Navigator, all these people, they moved to the faraway lands, right? And with the age of explorations and voyages came colonialism and imperialism, right? And this colonialism, this age of explorations, this have intensified the context between variety of people. Context between the people have intensified. And if these contact between the people have intensified, then what had happened? Basically, the people who were going there as explorers, as voyagers, they started collecting data about variety of customs, right? About variety of, you can say, traditions and all. They started collecting data about them, right? And that data, that information about these various people, that get accumulated in the libraries in Europe, right? That information was getting deposited in the libraries of Europe. One thing. Second, these colonial people, when they were ruling over faraway lands, they faced difficulties. They faced difficulties. And when they were facing difficulties, they were forced to study cultures of the people. They were forced to study the cultures of people, because agar wo nahi padenge, so there will be more and more revolts and more expenditure of these colonialists. So how effectively they can rule over these people? They started studying these people, and they started studying their customs, their traditions, their variety of social institutions, right? So this colonial people, they were forced to study, right? And second thing was the data collected by them, these people from these colonial administrators, these voyagers and adventurers went on to the libraries. And when it was happening, at the same time, Darwin published his theory, his book of Origin of Species, right? From this data, from this administrative necessity, all these things have helped in systematizing anthropology, right? So what you can see, this unsystematic to systematic graduation is due to many factors. It's due to enlightenment, it's due to explorations, it's due to colonialism, it's due to Darwin's ideas, right? And the more and more research, and after that what had happened, after that basically when this everything had happened, so in the critical phase, the last phase that we were talking about, various schools were developed. At that time, anthropology was a full-fledged discipline of university studies, right? So this is what you have to understand. Now, few statements are there about anthropology, and let me take those statements and then try to address the question on the basis of those statements, right? So the first question about this history and development of anthropology is, so the first question is whether anthropology is the child of Darwinism. Whether anthropology is the child of Darwinism. Discuss, right? You have to discuss this question, that whether anthropology is the child of Darwinism. This statement is made by R.R. Merritt. R.R. Merritt is a British anthropologist, and you can say the follower or disciple of E.B. Tylor. He says that anthropology emerged out of Darwinian ideas. Now, it is up to you to understand whether it is true or not. Are you convinced that it is a product of the Darwinian ideas, or it was there even before? What do you think in that manner? That is the question here. So if you get this question, how will you address this question, right? That is, I have to say, and I gave you this assignment in today's class, how you can address this question, right? So basically, in this question you can say that this statement was given by R.R. Merritt, who highlighted the importance of Darwinian ideas in systematizing anthropology as a discipline, right? Because it is only after the publication of Darwin's book, the social Darwinism emerged. And from there, first systematic theory in anthropology came into being, that is classical evolutionism, right? That is one thing. But there are other sides of the argument also. The other side of the argument is that anthropology is as old as the humanity itself. The second thing is that Herodotus was the first anthropologist who studied human cultures, human biology in 5th century BC, right? So you have to give both sides of arguments. One side is that supports and who are against, right? In support, you can quote this and you can give that the systematic, systematizing, the importance is this. But here you can talk about that it is as old as humanity itself. You can talk about the contribution of Herodotus, Aristotle and others, right? You can even quote the book of T.K. Penniman, who wrote the 100 Years of Anthropology in 1935, and he says the development before 1835, right? So it counters that argument, right? Now, when you write an introduction, when you give support and against, then you have to make a conclusion, and that conclusion, you can say that, you know, the unsystematic beginning of anthropology was even there before Darwin, but Darwin played a very instrumental role in systematizing anthropology as a discipline of study and practice. That is how you can conclude. So let me give you a structure of this question so quickly, so that you can address this. You can download the same from the description of the video that is available to you, right? So in introduction, right, in introduction you can either start with the definition of anthropology, or you can start with the idea of R. Merritt. You must understand this statement was given by R. Merritt. Then you can say that why he gave this idea, right? So the support argument in support of this line, right, this idea of R. Merritt. So you can say it from there the first theory emerged. Now against, you can quote all these ideas, but finally you have to conclude, and in conclusion you cannot discredit Darwin, because whatever he did, whatever he said was basically instrumental in the systematic beginning of anthropology, right? So that is what you have to write here. Now there is a second question, the second statement, that anthropology is the child of imperialism. There is a second statement that anthropology is the child of imperialism. This is a statement made by a famous anthropologist, Kathleen Gog, who studied Nair family, right, in India, right? So she did very elaborate work on marriage and family, even in India. So are you convinced with this statement? Try to think, right, analyze this statement in the light of our understanding that we have discussed. There is another statement that anthropology is the child of revolt and rebellion. Anthropology is the child of revolt and rebellion. This statement was given by Levi Strauss, French-born or French and American anthropologist, you can say, right? Structural school is attributed to him, right? So he says that it is a child of revolt and rebellion. We have already discussed this also, right? That because of the revolts, because of the difficulties faced by the colonial rulers, right? Various kinds of revolts did take place in India also, right? So he says that it is the revolts from where anthropology, right? Because these administrators, they must understand the customs, right? The practices, the beliefs of the people. You know that 1857 revolt in India was an outcome of various factors, and among them there were many social reforms introduced by Britishers, right? So are you convinced with his statement? You have to think, analyze, and we will discuss about that too in the classes to come. So these are your assignments also. Try to think, write over them, right? And we will meet with these explanations. Now, there are few more statements that I want to take with you, but I believe that we will meet tomorrow, right? Already we have covered 3 hours. So, tomorrow we will take from here, right, and take on from here, and we will talk about whether anthropology is a natural or social science, right? Anthropology, in which we study whether anthropology is a natural or social science. So, what is natural science? Natural science like biology, physics, chemistry, social science like sociology and all. What is anthropology? That will be our point of discussion tomorrow, right? First point. Then, what is unique about anthropology? What is unique about anthropology? That we will discuss tomorrow again, right? We will try to summarize whatever we have studied today, right? And then we will move on to the major branches, a little detailed discussion on major branches of anthropology, right? Suppose there may be a direct question. So, I will discuss with you some of the questions that you can write from there, right? Unless you understand that what question has been, you can be asked from this topic and how you are going to write, it is difficult. The question that we have discussed about that the anthropology is the child of Darwinism, it is available in our description, right? Video description, please download that from there, right? In the same way, you will get 1 or 2 questions or maybe 3 questions every day as an assignment for your own performance appraisal, for your own performance, and after this major branches, all the 4 branches, 5 branches we will discuss, and finally we will move on to the relationship of anthropology with other disciplines, right? So, tomorrow we will take on to the relationships, right? So, this is it for today. Thank you for your patience. We will meet tomorrow. Take care and do write the answers.